Nearly 60 years ago, when basketball fans jammed Old Carter Gym for the Harnett County High School Championship, little did anyone know that those in attendance would be witnesses to history. That night, February 29, 1964, Boone Trail and Angier played a game that lasted 13 overtimes before Boone Trail won 56-54. No basketball game since then on the high school, college, or professional level has lasted as long. Frank Stewart was a senior guard for the Boone Trail Pioneers and led all scorers that night with 29 points. He graduated and enrolled in Campbell in the fall of 1964, where he played under legendary coach Fred McCall. Along the way, Frank played an important role on Campbell teams that later became an NAIA powerhouse. He graduated, moved into the teaching and coaching profession, raised 3 kids, but stayed in touch with his teammates and opponents from that 13 overtime game. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is our next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with people who have made this place special over the years. I'm delighted today to be joined by former basketball standout Frank Stewart. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Frank, and thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Glad to be with you. I had a lot of memories as I drove in today of coming down. Campbell has really changed since 1964.
Absolutely.
You don't have to walk into Carter Gym now and see the difference in that gym and the gym I just drove by. It is amazing.
Frank, let's start at the beginning. How did all this get going? Tell us about what it was like growing up in Harnett County and how you got started playing sports.
Well, as I remember it, it started for me about the 8th grade. Coach Black was my high school coach who was very instrumental in my life. He was a counselor at the basketball school. As I remember it cost about $15 a week back then. Coach Black would bring his players, whoever was able to come, and I don't know that I ever gave him $15, but he would just add us to the bottom of the list. He had enough power that whoever his players were put me on whatever group I was supposed to be in, and then we would participate. I got to know a lot of friends, Pete Marriage being one of them. Pete was about the same age as me, and he was there as a counselor. He played with the college boys, but he was, as we, over the years, coming back and forth, because I went to basketball school all 4 years. After I graduated, Coach McCall wanted me to come to basketball school after senior, but I was playing American Legion baseball, and it was a conflict, so I told him I'd come. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to room with Marvin Moss, who was a senior, and I didn't show up. When I did get to Campbell, Marvin said, "Why didn't you come?" I said, "I had other things to do," and but then I did come. That's the whole story in itself, how I got here, because I was planning to go to East Carolina, and whether we get into that or not, but I ended up at Campbell and played. Didn't go. Matter of fact, one of the stipulations when I went to Campbell, everybody, how I got here, my mom and me came and begged Colonel Turtle to let me in. I had to come to summer school, but I said, "Can't go to summer school. I got to farm. I got to help my dad get the stuff in, to get the crops in." And so he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll let you do." He knew I played basketball in that game you just talked about, and he said, "I'll let you come in when you're not going to summer school, but you'll have to take remedial math and remedial English, and you can't play basketball." I said, "Okay, I won't plan to play basketball anyway." Well, my first day or two at Campbell, I enrolled. I had Coach Davis, the baseball coach, as my PE teacher, and he recognized me. He said, "I thought you were going to East Carolina." I said, "I was, but I didn't get in." So my mom come over here and begged me, Colonel Turtle let me in here. He said, "Well," I said, "but one of the stipulations," he said, "you going to play basketball?" I said, "No, that's one of the stipulations I got in. I can't play basketball." He said, "Well, I bet you'll be out there before it's all over with." And sure enough, as soon as Coach McCall saw me in the campus, he called me in his office. He said, "Come out and walk on." I said, "I can't." He said, "I'll take care of that." So he took care of it, so I came out. Well, things went well. Kind of intimidating when you 5'8", and you played against 6'8" boys and all. And so I didn't think I did too good, but and I probably didn't, because he called me in the office and said, Frank, you got a lot of ability, you got a lot of things that would help the team, but at this time I don't think you're ready. I'll make you the manager. I said, Coach, you can cut me, but I'm not being the manager. And so he kept me around for whatever reason. For whatever he saw, and I played a little bit. I played on the JV team back and forth. That's when I played against Pete when he was down at Southwood, and then he would come back to basketball school. We'd come every year, and I'd come every year after I was in the 8th grade, either as a participant, or as I came as a college. They give us I think they give us $150 if you coached and you came back and worked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I worked for a few years while I was playing, and then as I moved into coaching, I came back for 16 years as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Drove the bus, did all the things you had to do. But Coach McCall, I saw something that I don't know, he might have felt sorry for me. I don't know what his, but I did get to play some. And then at my second year, John Marshpaints came.
Mm-hmm.
They put John in my room. We became roommates for 3 years. He got married.
Mm-hmm.
And then my senior year, I roomed with Bob Burke, who was the coach at Chawand.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I think I went to his when they named the floor after Bob. Bob was a good friend, and he came out of South Texas State somewhere as a junior college, but and went on into coaching. So I went on to teaching. Matter of fact, as I went to Campbell, I played. As I got older, I played. Kenny Faulkner came in. I remember when they recruited Kenny. I won a scholarship to start with, and I didn't ever get it. Coach McCall gave me a little help later on, but it's funny when Kenny came in, I was struggling trying to play, to make my time. He come in, and so I was pretty. That may what reason Coach McCall kept me around. I had a lot of grit. I had a lot of fight, and I didn't understand you telling me I couldn't do something. So I ran over Kenny one night. I couldn't dribble too good with my right hand, with my left hand, but you couldn't take it from my right hand. So I would come down the left side of the floor with the left. I'll never forget, we played Atlantic Christian. Frankie Caraway, I believe it was his name. Man, if you met him at midcourt, he'd take your ball. He'd take the ball from me. I mean, I had to go down the left, but if I turned and went right, he couldn't get it. And but I ran over to Kenny one time because he was pretty good too. And I was going to the right. Well, he cut me off. I just run over him. I could, because if I'd have reversed, he'd have took the ball. Right. So I just run over. Coach McCall, run over his protege that he just brought in. And he said, he run up there and grabbed me around his shirt, twisted it good and hard, and said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "He got in the way." And he said, well, he could have gone. I said, "Look, I'm out here. It's a fight. It ain't about him. It's about me, for me." And he said, "Okay." And he said, "You think you could?" He said, I believe he said, "You think you could take me, don't you?" I said, "I don't know. I'd try you." But he didn't like. Coach McCall was most intimidating man. Probably, he was in charge. One thing about Coach McCall, he ran the show. I mean, I can tell you stories about how he ran us and put us on the line. The things he would do. We practiced from 3:30 to 6:30 every day, and the cafeteria closed at 6:30. We had to hustle down there, and then you were so tired you couldn't eat. Mm-hmm. And but I got started at Campbell way back as an 8th grader. Came as a student in the basketball school for all the years I was in high school. Then came to Campbell, played. I was here 5 years. Getting back to what I said, the reason I came to 5th year, when I came to Cordell's Hall of Fame, I hadn't seen Cordell, I don't guess, since 1969. But I did, and I don't remember playing with Cordell that much. I asked him. I think he came in the fall of '68, which would I'd have been a senior, and I don't know if he was eligible or not. But then I came back the 5th year. I was in line to enroll for my last semester of college after the basketball season was over. I had 2 classes. I was majoring in business administration. I had money in banking, public finance left to graduate. Coach Roberts was in there. He said, "Stewart, what you going to do next year?" I said, "I don't know, probably go to Vietnam." The Vietnam was raging then. Mm. And he said, "Well, why don't you come back and take the course?" He knew I had taken a lot of PE courses as my electives. Mm-hmm. He said, "You got a lot of electives in PE. You can come back another year probably and get a teaching certificate and maybe teach and coach." So I changed right there in line. He changed the direction of my life just by asking me what I'm going to do next year. And I changed, took a full schedule of PE that next fall in '65. I think Coach McCall was still the coach, but he resigned 7 games into the season that year, and Coach Roberts took over. And I was a glorified assistant coach. Well, this stage they called him the manager. You know? So I came and I helped. The manager was White. What was his first name? I don't know, but his last name was White. So I helped him, and I would do drills for him and do things whatever the coach. But then I went on to. As a matter of fact, Coach McCall was instrumental in getting me the job at Irwin as a coach. I think Mr. Kennedy, the principal, called Coach McCall, "You got anybody graduating that might be a coach?" Mm-hmm. And he told him called me. My mom was instrumental then. She ended up getting me a place to stay in Irwin because I was just stupid enough to know I don't care where I go to Irwin or not, but right. But she didn't want me to go. Right. So, and that time you had an exception for teaching. Mm-hmm. So I went to Irwin 2 years and coached 2 years there. Was the head baseball coach and the JV basketball coach. Well, then the Dunn 3A school there came open, and back then you didn't get a 3A coaching job. Mm-hmm. You had to be served your time, but they took a chance on me. I stayed there 1 year. I loved my coaching job, but I didn't like the teaching high school students. So I went back to graduate school, met my wife, and I had plans to go on into coaching like Bob had gone. He had done the same thing. He went to Greensboro and then went on to Shawan. And the boy that he coached as a junior college boy went to state.
Nate McMillan.
Nate McMillan. Mm-hmm. And then Nate McMillan, I think, helped him out. Bob went to Portland as some kind of assistant coach. Mm-hmm. But I went back to graduate school, met my wife, and then stayed on in Greenville because my wife had another year left in Florida and coached at Aiden Grifton for a year. And then when she graduated, I moved back. That summer, I was at home. I always helped my dad. I always came home. I stayed in college 5 years, but I always come home and help my daddy put the crop in. We picked cucumbers and primed the back. But he depended on me a lot to help, and I would always come home. And I continued to come home even when I started teaching because the summers were off, and I started teaching. And then I was at home with no job in '74 and helped Dad get the crop in, no job. They tried to get me to go to Boone Trail at that time to coach Latin school. But Coach Black was another big part of my life. And he had an accident and was having some medical problems. And I told him, I'm not coming here. I'm not to have people to think I, replaced Coach Black. Right. They said, well, Coach Black is gone whether you come or not. So I came there and coached 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then when it consolidated, I chose to stay on because my farming had got bigger and bigger. And I didn't feel like I could coach at the high school level and give it the time that I would expect someone else to give.
Right.
So I stayed on and coached at JVs, the junior high team, and farm. It was at my farm. In 97, my wife died, but circumstances, usually circumstances changes your path in life, and it to question it changed mine. I look back, and I don't regret any decisions I made, but I can see many times, you come down to a fork in the road, you got to choose a way, and then you go forward.
So Frank, going back to your youth, sports and farming, was that kind of what your life looked like back there? School, sports, and farming?
Yeah, one thing, I had 3 sons. They lost their mom when the youngest one was 11, and the middle one was 14, and the oldest one was 16. And so it was me and the 3 boys. And my oldest boy was probably the best athlete, but he didn't have the love for it. But my 2 middle sons were good. They played in a 4A conference. Doug had offers to play football, but he didn't like to be it. But getting to Greg, the youngest one, he got the player of the year 2 years. But and he's in a 4A conference, and to get player of the year or athlete of the year for 2 years in a row. But before they go in the community, they would all say, "You play basketball?" And they say, "Yeah, I play a little bit." They say, "Oh, I don't know. You won't never be good as your dad." They lie to you, and they say, "Daddy, how good were you?" I said, "Boys, I don't know that I could even make your high school basketball." It's a different game, and they get into big arguments now. Who's better? The game it changes, and we had 1 or 2 people on our team that could dunk. Now, the 5'8" dunk. It's different.
Absolutely.
And so I got started out of just hard work and grit. I didn't have a lot of a basketball ability, but I did. I was quick, I was strong, and I was determined. And when you pick cucumbers all day or prime tobacco all day, you get a sense of determination that you're going to make it. And that's kind of the way I got to play Campbell. Mine was not one ability. I had, most of those boys that came from up north, Riverside and all, had a lot more ability than I did. But I got by on just pure determination.
Frank, tell me about Coach Al Black. I got to know him later on when he came back and helped out in the 80s and 90s at the camp, and by that time, Coach was still helping out with the basketball side, but he always had one night every week where he brought tons of churns of ice cream, and all the counselors got ice cream and stuff. But tell me a little bit about Al Black.
Coach Black, he came to Boone Trail as a coach out of Lillington. He was from Lillington. He lived on the border of the Lillington Boone Trail area. And matter of fact, he had a nephew that he took on his wife's sister's children. Gene came to Coach Black's house when he was a junior. He is as good a shooter as I've ever seen. Matter of fact, when he was 65 years old, I rambled a little bit, but he was 65 years old. He joined the senior games, and he won the shooting contest. He made 18 in a row where you made 3 and 3 and 3, 18 in a row and became that. He played at Campbell for 1 year, and he could shoot with him, but he couldn't get open to shoot. His dribbling and all. But Coach Black was a good man. Ain't no question. But he was in an accident. He was in the reserves. And they were on the summer camp, and they were putting up tents, and somebody, you know how they stack those poles on top?
Sure.
It's got that ball on top of the tent that goes in that. Well, somebody threw up a ball of ice and swung it, and the end come off and hit him right between the eyes. And they opened his brain. He had pictures of that. It changed him, and he still coached, but it changed his whole personality. But Coach Black was instrumental in the basketball school. You're right. He came. He ran a a station at a gym, but he always brought his boys. One thing I told somebody, the reason Coach Black was so successful as a country coach is he put in the time. He was not a big X and O's much. I don't remember setting up, a 2-2-1 press and all that, but he opened the gym and he made it available, and he spent a lot of time with. And back in that day, all we had was the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when we got the first people. My son. I remember when we got our first television. I mean, I've been around the lowers. Can you imagine a young person now? What the technology now? But I remember when I was right before I was early 50s. So when I was about the 8th grade, we had one, but we got it probably around 55.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember not having a television in my house, but I remember listening to Billy Packer and all of them on Lynn Chapel on the radio. That's the way out. But Coach Black, ain't no question, he probably influenced my life and helped me on the path that I ended up going to more than anybody. Picking me up. Man, back then we walked to practice.
Mm-hmm.
If you stayed out to school and practiced, you walked home. You didn't. Parents didn't have time to go pick you up, or if they didn't have a car to go pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with Coach Black, he looked after his players. Just like what I told you a while ago, on basketball school, he put us on the roster. I said, they but one man probably influenced me any more growing up. The only man that probably influenced me more than Coach Black was my dad.
Frank, let's take us back to that leap day, 1964. What are some of your clearest memories of that game that night?
Everybody I've seen was at that game. But matter of fact, I just run into the principal of my senior year of high school, Jack Cashin's son, came to our Ruleton meeting this past Thursday. And the first thing he asked me, did I play in that game? I said, I did. But his dad told him about it.
Mm-hmm.
But he won't. But his dad didn't last but 1 year, but he was a good man. But as a player, I'm sure the tension. I know when my boys were playing and I watched them, I know I was a lot more nervous watching them play than I was the night we played. And back then, the rules were, whoever got the ball held it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had 3 times, 3 or 4 overtimes that the situation on the tip ball was an opening, we scored.
Mm-hmm.
Other team scored, and then we held it again.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, and everybody said, how did y'all play that long, that tired? Well, it wasn't that, it wasn't that active under 13 overtime. The activity took place in the beginning. I don't remember the tension, but my parents got home, they were probably a nervous wreck, of trying to. But, we were very competitive with Angier in football and basketball. In fact, I'll tell you this. We were 7-3 in football that year, and Angier tied us. And you know what the score was? 13-13. So, but I don't remember details about that game. Like I was told about Cordell. Looking back, I can't remember if I played with Cordell or not. Mm-hmm. I remember playing with Johnny and Dickie Waters and players, but Cordell, because I asked him, I said, "What did you come?" He said, "I came in the January of '68, and that was my senior year."
Right.
Well, see, we were in mid-season in '68, January. You don't have about 4 or 5 more games after January, and so probably the season ended in February. So I didn't play with him. I don't know if he's even eligible in the '68 year.
Yeah, he played in that 67-68 season. That was his first after coming from Temple, and then again.
So he did play someday.
He did, yes, he did. He and had a dramatic impact. looking back again, after 12 overtime periods, 9 of which were scoreless, according to everything I've read. I wasn't there. I was born 2 weeks later.
Okay.
You stole the opening tip and made a layup to put Boone Trail ahead. Did y'all see something that you tipped it off, or was it just instinct on that play?
Just the ball, whoever was tipped to missed it, and I shot through and picked it up, and there was an opening, and I took it. Because we would try to score off the tip, but after everything got settled in, why not hold it? Back then, on the shot clock, it was 3 minutes. You held the ball. So, and the initial tip took place, you're down to 2.5 minutes. So then if you don't get a pretty good shot, you're not going to risk taking another one. If you can hold the ball, you hold it. Back now you got 30 seconds, so you can't hold it. But then you could hold it to the end of the shot. So it was, the tension was, I guess, is down to the last second. It was just, it won't, I mean, they weren't out pressing trying to take the ball.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It was, we stood there and you dribbled it, and when it got down to 10 or 15 seconds, you made a move. Matter of fact, we scored one time, I don't know what the overtime was, right at the end, and left enough time that Angier could come back and score too. And then but there again, on I think the 13 overtime, now I may misspeak here, we scored early. Angier come down and missed, and then fouled me get in, and we went 4 up. We won by 2. So we went 4 up in the 13th overtime.
Right. Frank, when you walked off the court after that 13th overtime, did you and your teammates and your competitors realize what you had been a part of?
No. As I remember, we went home. We were. It wasn't. I don't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember a court rush. I'm sure there was one. I can tell the stories of where there was a court rush back in when I was in 9th grade. We had one, but and a lot of times you don't remember. I don't remember details because, like I said, if everybody had told me that game, that gym wasn't home.
No. They might not fit in the 3,000-seat arena, much less the 1,500 seats that were there.
But in details, I don't remember the nervousness or the excitement or whatever. My mom and dad didn't come home and said, "Were you nervous?" I don't remember being nervous. But when you get involved in the game, and I'm sure now when the boys standing at the foul line and the game's on the line, if you're nervous, you don't usually. I guess that's the reason you miss it.
Our guest on Tales from the Creek is Frank Stewart, class of 1968, basketball standout and the leading scorer in the longest game in basketball history. Frank, you touched on it earlier. You attended the basketball school in 8th grade, and you struck up a friendship with a pretty darn good basketball player. What did you learn from Pete Maravich?
Oh, well, Pete was a whole different level. Even I can remember when he was coming as a counselor, as a 8th grader, 9th grader. I believe Lynn Chappell was at Wake Forest and Woodard, and he would shoot foul shots for them. He didn't play with us. He was a whole different level of ability above any of us. But he still was 14 or 15 years old. I mean, and so we developed a friendship. He'd go, he's been out to my house. We went to Myrtle Beach together, and we had a friendship that as it drifted apart as he went on to Broughton, and then we ran back into one another when he went to Southwood and played against other. But that's a quick visit. But right before the game, or maybe after the game, you don't have much time. But back when he was in the 8th and 9th grade coming to camp, we spent time together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that, you don't know how close down the years. I mean, when he was at LSU and went on to professional, we didn't ever see each other or do anything, but when he was a skinny little old big-nosed kid, we were close.
What are some of the other notable players or coaches that you remember from your time at the basketball school?
Well, like I said, there's no question Coach McCall, he's probably the most intimidating figure I've ever met as far as in being in charge. And he was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And he used it to, all the boys that were on scholarship, he felt like he had a little more power over them than the ones that weren't on scholarship, And but he was a strong man.
Mm-hmm.
He was a strong man. And Coach Roberts, I didn't ever play for Coach Roberts. My relationship with Coach Roberts was really a closer relationship in the last 10 years before he died. I mean, he lived in the community. I took him to the doctor, and we talked about, and that's what I told him. I said, we want to write a book about Coach McCall, because I can tell you stories about Coach McCall, things that happened that over the years. We went to Erskine one time playing, and they kicked him out of they got a technical about the referees or something, and they kicked him out of the game. He wouldn't leave. And so Red Myers, who was the coach at Erskine, I think he had a little power. He went to the official and said, look, don't, just let him stay. Just let him. So he went up in the corner, stayed. He didn't never leave the gym. But stuff like that. I remember coming down one time and went to, we come in at a halftime, and there was a 6-pack of 6-ounce Coca-Cola balls sitting there, and he kicked that thing, and balls went everywhere. But he would call me. I don't know. He'd say, Stewart, come down here. I'd always sit on the end of the bench. I got away from Coach because he'd beat you to death. But he'd say, Stewart, come here. And he'd put me down beside him. He's going to put me in. And he'd beat on me. And, was clapping his hands, beating on me, wouldn't put me in. So we'd have a timeout or something. I'd get up and leave back there. So he'd say, Stewart, come down here. I think he wanted to put me in because he wanted the ball, but he was scared. I read he was scared to put me in. But he'd call me down there. And so as soon as I got an opportunity, I'd move down to the other end. But he, I had to say the biggest thing I remember about Coach McCall, he was in charge.
Mm-hmm. And he did take that right hand especially. He'd lean into you if you're standing next to him talking to you, and it'd hit you with that as he was just kind of using his hands, gesticulating. And he was a big man, and sometimes you didn't know how hard you hit somebody. He would call me. He'd say, Cole, come here. Like the same way, and wanted to talk.
Well, I'm going to tell you what he did now. I forget where the game was, but Bob Etheridge, I believe, was a senior when I was a freshman. And he didn't mean to do it, but Coach McCall, he got up and we called timeout, and he got up, and when he turned around, he slung his hand. Bob and the team would sit down, and he slung his arm around like that and hit Bob upside the head, and he couldn't put him back in the game. He didn't mean to hit him, but he was a strong man. And he would catch you coming by the window, especially if you were a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked to hang in there and let them know that he ruled him. So I wouldn't go by there. But if he ever did call me in there, I wouldn't stay. And I think that's one thing. I think he kept me around to conquer me.
Frank, outside of basketball, what are some of your best memories from your time on campus?
Well, there ain't no question. The 5 years I spent at Campbell College was probably the most enjoyable 5 years. But it's a different. I don't know how the campus is still compact, but I lived in kitchen dorm. No, I lived in Leighton Annex the first year. Matter of fact, when I came, coming to college now is an ordeal. I'll tell you how I came to college. My best friend, one of my best friends at Boone Trail was a freshman at Carolina when I was a senior in high school. And he had been the quarterback, he'd been a player, and he was going to take his girlfriend back to Hampton, Virginia, the Sunday that I was supposed to go to Campbell. And it was a hurricane. And we taking her back, and we hydroplaned in Wilson. But we didn't have no problem. We went on, took her back. And he asked me if I'd ride with him. I said, yeah, I'll ride with you, but I got to go to college tonight. He said, well, I'll take you and drop you off on my way to Carolina. So my mom got my stuff together. She gave me about 4 or 5 shirts, about that big. I had a radio, a lamp, all in one box. And I walked into a room in Leighton Annex with 2 boys that had been in college the semester before, the fall, the spring semester. So they were second semester freshmen. And they told me later, we were going to get rid of you, because they had that room all to themselves. Now I'm putting that with them. And they said, we were going to get rid of you. I said, well, y'all didn't do too good a job because I stayed. I didn't even know. So I got involved in basketball. I played basketball. I was gone. I come home and sleep. I stayed in the gym. If you went to class, practice started at 3:30, practice 6:30. He used to give out. You go to the library or something. But I said, y'all didn't do too good a job because I didn't even know you were trying to get rid of me. One of them, we got to be close friends later. But I moved into Kitchen the next year, and I stayed in 102 for 4 years. And John Marshbanks lived with me. He was when I was that was my first year in Kitchen in 102, and John came in that year, and we put in 102. Pete Wish was the and Benny Dean. They lived in the main room. They were the dorm monitors. And see, Benny had come from, he was a junior college transfer. He'd come from Lewisburg. He was a good shooter, But like I said, as I went to the game the other night, it's a different game now as what we played. I mean, Dickie Waters, if it had the 3-point play when Dickie Waters was here, he could light it up now.
And Pete Maravich, too.
Yeah. but the Campbell, I loved college life. It's, you had to do a little work, but I like and especially at Campbell, they went but 2,400 students a year. And we had to eat the only cafeteria we had then was Marshbanks Cafeteria. So everybody ate there. You met people. I mean, when my senior year at 2,400, I probably knew 1,500 personally. That's one thing I always told my boys. They went to State, Carolina, Duke. Y'all don't have the same experience I had. Y'all, they never did live in a dorm. They lived in apartments. I said, you don't, or a suite. I said, I don't know. They don't have the same experience I had at Campbell. I didn't encourage them to come to Campbell because when you go in here, you don't realize how much it costs to go to a private school versus a state-sponsored school. But they no question. I enjoyed it here. I met a lot of friends, and the only thing I wish the reunion, that people would take place in the reunion. And I'm guilty of it too, like coming back. But there's people I've spent 4 years of my life with that I hadn't seen since 1968, 69.
Right.
But a 4-year relationship, you get close, especially if you live next door to somebody.
Absolutely. Frank, when you were a senior, Cordell Wise enrolls at Campbell and became the first African-American student in the school's history. Did you and your teammates think about the significance of that at the time? Was it that big of a deal?
I don't remember it being a big deal. He was just another player from Riverside, and he was good. I mean, he could. Coach McCall used to he could flat-footed jump straight up and dunk it. That was pretty big back then, And Coach McCall would at practice, he said, dunk it. And but I don't remember being any animosity or anything. He was accepted, and he was just another player. But it's amazing. I started not to come to that Hall of Fame thing, and I don't know if Cordell will even remember me or not. And as soon as I walked up, he said, "Hey, Stookie," and he said, "Have you still got that '65 Chevrolet?" I said, "No," but I said, "I wish I did," but it got away from me. But he remembered what kind of car I had, and I asked him about a couple of people that, like Gene Wright, who was a good friend of mine, still a good friend. Gene and I are going to play golf tomorrow together. And Gene just lost his wife. If Gene had my grit and meanness, he'd have been a superstar. Walter Brown, I don't know if you remember wrong. Walter could shoot. Matter of fact, they said Coach McCall went to the high school all-star game, and Walter put up 29 points, I think, that game, and Coach McCall signed him right that night. And Coach McCall, I remember, he put Walter in, but Walter was so intimidated by Coach McCall. He couldn't shoot in the game, because Coach McCall would holler, shoot. So, but I had to say, Walter Brown and Gene Wright, but neither one of them, you don't realize till you played the game, there's a lot of people that can shoot it, but there ain't a lot of people that can get open. Mm-hmm. You got to be, you notice some of these players, if they're wide open, they can burn that three down. But if they have to do anything on the movement, they're a whole different story.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to let you sit there and shoot it. But Gene didn't play but 1 year. And then he went. As a matter of fact, he went to Vietnam, but he's doing good.
Frank, through the years, the Boone Trail and Angier teams have gotten together routinely, even playing a game in 1974, and gathered to commemorate that 13 overtime game. What's it like when you and your teammates and your competitors get together?
Yeah, well, we joked about that. We played that game at Lillington in the Lillington gym, and I remembered it really well because as Angie always bragged later, we beat you in return. I said, yeah, we want the same 5. I said, we started playing, we were playing against those boys that were 9th and 10th grade. But we had a good relationship. Phil Farrell was a superintendent of Harnett County. Robert Hall, I think Robert's passed. I don't know how many. We hadn't had much contact. Coach Black was instrumental in keeping that in line. Mm-hmm. He made sure we had, but we had a 10-year reunion or 5 or 10. I know we've had 3. Mm-hmm. And Coach Black was always instrumental. He took a lot of pride in that and spent a lot of time organizing that and loved to talk about it, but we were competitive with Angier. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, we would fight about every game in some way, fast form, at the end of the game and after the game, but we always be over with when the game was over. But and we developed a lot of relationships with Phil and Robert Hall and all those, and they spoiled Boone Trail still living. As a matter of fact, we gonna get together, supposed to get together on January the 29th, next Thursday, and eat lunch or dinner. 3 of us live within 5 or 10 miles of each other. William Brown lives about 4 or 5, and he'll come by from time to time. Gene Wright, I play with golf with him about every week. Mm-hmm. And Ralph Hester lives in Wilson, and he comes down. He's still got a brother that lives here. So the 4 of us that still living are still in close and still communicate together.
Frank, when you later came to Campbell and times that you've been back and gone through Carter Gym, it's just across the street really from where we're recording this right now. Did your mind ever flash back to that 13 overtime game?
It's when I came to I came to something. I don't know who. When I know when Danny had his service year, they met the family in Carter.
Right.
And that's the last time I've been here. And then they went over to D Reach for the service. But no, Carter Jim has got a lot of memories, not only in high school, but during Christmas, the basketball team had to come back early. They heated dorms, so we stayed in that back room down.
Got underneath.
Dungeon.
Absolutely.
They got bunk beds down.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we had to stay for. I remember going to Spindale, but Campbell was so instrumental in my life. The first time I ever remember eating a salad was on a trip. We had a pregame meal and we had a postgame meal. But I never had eaten salads. I don't ever forget the first time I dated a girl at Campbell, or one of the times I dated Campbell, we went to a restaurant where they had a salad bar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was too macho to go to the salad bar. I said, I ain't going up and get no salad bar. I thought it was a woman, and she said, well, I'll go get it. Looking back, how ignorant I was, but I didn't, we didn't eat out back then.
Mm-hmm.
You cooked at home when you played. And the experiences I had at Campbell, that's the type of thing I always said. A student ought to have to go to two places. They ought to have to go to college a year, even to flunk out.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to go military. I didn't never go to military, and I regret that. But there again, because I think you learn so much about yourself. When I learned things about myself that I didn't know I had when I came off to Campbell. I know the first 2 weeks I was at Campbell, I said, wonder if I'll ever get to know anybody here. Because everybody was coming back, hugging, and you ball along. Like I was getting back to the store when you said Dwayne dropped me off. I mean, I told him, I'll go with you, but I got to go to college tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Mama had my little bit of thing. They dropped me off. He dropped me off. We made 2 trips upstairs to take my stuff. And then he was gone. And there I was. I was in college. It wasn't like my parents took me and drove it. I mean, I'm sure that now they have a tractor for a trailer truck now. They take all their belongings.
Move-in day is a
big day.
Is something. When we moved our daughter into UNC Wilmington, we had, this would have been in the fall of 2015, they had all these student volunteers that would come and empty out. We had 2 cars.
Yeah.
Empty out the back of an SUV and the trunk of another car, and they would come pull everything out and move it into that dorm. And I'm sitting there thinking, there is no way they're getting all this in for not just our daughter, Catherine, but her roommate.
Yeah. And
sure enough, you go in there and it's all stacked up there. Now, they didn't help you move it out, and they didn't help you sophomore year. But that first year moving in, it is an assembly line. It is absolutely something. And I can even flash back to when I moved in 40 years ago. I had a laundry basket that was full of linens and a suitcase and maybe a radio or something, a few books and stuff like that. But it was not the production that it has become.
Oh,
Frank, you mentioned how the game has changed so much since you played. And certainly the shot clock and the 3-point line are the 2 biggest things that have happened. What do you like best about the game as it's changed since the time when you played?
Well, I was just watching the game last night with my son, and we were watching, and I said, one thing that we didn't do, because they like to, when they hear people talk about the 13 overtime game and me playing, and try to say, well, how's the game different? I said, you see that guy? Now, when they bring the ball down the floor, and I'm talking about tremendous pressure to take it, they go between their legs. We didn't go, but I don't remember ever going between my legs playing. I mean, really, I didn't ever, that wasn't part of the game when I played. If you could, there were people that could take it. Matter of fact, like I said, I mentioned Frankie Caraway from Atlantic Christian. If you went between your legs when he'd take it from you. I mean, but they're so good at it. They come down there and they cut that back and forth. I watched last night. Who was I watching? And the boy that was taking the ball down the floor, Arkansas and Connecticut. Matter of fact, Arkansas. No, was Arkansas and Connecticut? Who beat Connecticut last night?
I didn't see it.
Well, Connecticut got beat last night.
Okay.
In number one. What's the team? What's the team from? I didn't know they were from Nebraska.
Creighton.
Creighton beat them last night. Hey, 19 points.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big game because I saw Connecticut play at the beginning of the year. I said, yeah, they're going to win the national championship, but then they get beat. But I'd say the handling the ball, it ain't nothing for. Those guards steal the ball now. They dunk it when they go in for the thing. That's the biggest thing. The game is above the rim now rather than at the rim. Is what I see.
Well, and certainly the skills and the fact of Pete Maravich, Earl Monroe with the spin move, Pete with between the legs, behind the back, the incredible passes, that started. They said that Pete had played 20 years ahead of the times and would have been incredible. His game would have been that, but it became the norm. And I look back at all those homework basketball drills that we did coming up, and that Pete and Press devised for Pete, and then they employed him here at the basketball camp, and then the basketball camp I went to at Catawba and everywhere else. You're practicing dribbling behind the back, your spin move, your dribble in between the legs. That just evolved in the game, just as when I don't remember coming up and shooting the ball from 20 feet because there was no 3-point line.
Right.
Even when not till my senior year of college in 86, 87 was it adopted permanently.
Right. You didn't get anything extra for shooting there.
No.
If we'd have shot one that far out with Coach McCall, you wouldn't played anymore.
He would have sat you on the bench, right?
But now the game is Pete. I don't know how he would measure it now, but he had so much knowledge for the game. Mm-hmm. He could throw that ball. He could be the dead run and fling that ball on dead run dribbling. He could do so much more in his time than the average person. But there ain't no question. He would have been able to adjust. Now, a lot of them, there's some shooters that we had. Dickie Waters was as good a shooter as I've ever seen, but he was kind of heavy-footed and slow. I don't know, and it's a quick game.
And you go from the influence of a Pete Maravich and the way he could pass the ball to a Magic Johnson, who was a 6'9" point guard, which was never going to happen. We would have thought in the early 70s, but by the end of the decade, here comes Magic Johnson changing the game. And then later on, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James, who is a tight end playing basketball, and then Steph Curry, who changes it. And then you look at it just from a Campbell perspective, a 5'9" guard, Chris Clemens, who could dunk and also could shoot. It was routine for him to pull up from 30, 35 feet and shoot just a regular jump shot like somebody might shoot a free throw.
Oh, yeah. That's and as I grew up, David Thompson, in my mind, was as good or the best college player I'd ever watched. If they'd had to dunk when he was there, you can see pictures where he jumps up and drops it in the basket because he couldn't dunk it.
The Alcindor rule that they adopted when Lou Alcindor, later Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, went to UCLA to try to negate the dunk. I remember Tim Stoddard would throw the ball from the wing, and David Thompson would go get it for that 74 NC State team, and he had to pull his hands back to drop it in.
Yeah, and but he, and they went undefeated. People don't realize that the state went undefeated the year before they won the national championship in '74. They went 2 years undefeated. And when I grew up, though, you didn't watch the national championship because UCLA was going to win. 10 years or so many years, how many there? I was at Myrtle Beach one that on national championship, and he would say, "You gonna watch the game?" No, UCLA's gonna win. Ain't nobody gonna watch the game. But it's amazing to think with competitive now. Can you think about anybody winning it on that scale now?
1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed by President Johnson. The Beatles performed on the Ed Sullivan Show. The 13 overtime game happened on Leap Night. Coach John Wooden led UCLA to the first of 10 national championships in a 12-year span. That year, Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, became the world heavyweight boxing champion that year. That's a lot packed into 1 year, Frank.
That's right. And, you're thinking about the Beatles were coming up. People don't understand. But when I was in college, of the top 10 songs the Beatles had, I know 9 of them might have had 10. But, it's hard to imagine that a musical group would have all 10.
Well, UCLA was the Beatles of college basketball, I guess we could say.
That's right.
Finally, Frank, can you put into words how Campbell and this community has impacted you?
Well, that's it, no question. Coach Black planted the seed. In basketball, I'm a long ways from being able any time a superstar, but I got by, and Coach Black planted the seed in the 8th grade and made me have a love for the game of basketball. And I thought I was coming to Campbell to give it up, but Coach McCall gave me the opportunity to be on the team. Not necessarily to contribute anything, because I don't think he thought I was any good enough that he was going to need me. But I reckon I was so persistent and so always there that, and I was from the area, and but he kept me around, and sooner or later I played a little bit here and a little bit there. But I always tell my boys, because they hear, a lot of people think just because you played in that 13 overtime game, you were a superstar. No, I wasn't no superstar. As a matter of fact, that's the most points I ever got in the game. I don't know how I can get that money. But but in our time, it was good. But I don't know how it would measure up in this day and time. You see what I'm saying? But ain't no question that basketball and coaches and people influenced me. And Campbell, I developed all my, I guess, skills of what I am today, being a coach. Now I'm retired. I was always involved in coaches. All my boys were athletes. That you are what you live, and if you that's when I'll give credit to Coach McCall. Met Coach Black. He always opened the gym. We didn't have anywhere else to go, but he took the time to open the gym, and I feel like I'm a product of the fact that he was willing to give up his time and efforts to be there. Well, my dad was there, but he was working. His job, Coach Black's job, was to coach and be around. But he didn't have to be around as much as he was. Saturday morning, he'd open the gym. We'd be up there. We'd walk. We had to walk, but we got there. But the two, other than my dad, the two men that developed me, that made me coach. I coached for 16 years at my old high school. I coached and taught 23 years. And when my wife died, I in 97, she was sick 3 years, and I never did go back. But I didn't really want to. A lot of the fathers. I pretty much decided I wasn't going to coach my sons too. I supported them, and I was at every game, but I didn't know that whether it was true or not. I didn't want to have to say, well, you wouldn't be playing if you want your son. And I coached him in Little League and all that. But I made a conscious decision when I was at Boone Trail and I went to the Western Harnett. My boys were young and getting ready to move into I coached my oldest boy in middle school, and I made my decision then. And circumstances, too, caused me not. But I coached him in 8th grade, and I decided then, however they do, I'll support them, but I don't want to be the coach. And he never did play after the 8th grade. And one thing, he went to camp, but he didn't have the love for the game. My other two did, but the other two played 4A and were very, very good at it. Like I told them, they would, the people in the community might think I was better than they were, but hey, I know I couldn't. I didn't know. But, when you hear it, someone tells you, they didn't ever see my boys play. And they couldn't have played college. But if they probably didn't ever strive to. Greg could have played, but, I tell you one thing, it's work. You don't play just because you want to. It's work. We went to, we get on the bus at 11 o'clock, drive to Catawba, had the pregame in at 4:30, go in, play at 7, get back at 10:30. You expected to go to class the next day. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's not easy. We go to practice at 3:30 every afternoon, and get out at 6:30. I mean, it's work, and it's time consuming, but I enjoyed it, and it made me who I am.
Well, Frank Stewart says that he would not have been good enough to play on his son's 4A team. But 60 years ago at Carter Gym, the man scored more than half of the points for the team that won the longest game in basketball history. Never since on the high school, college, or pro level equaled 13 overtimes. And I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been Frank Stewart. Thank you, Frank, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking and reminiscing. But, it brings a lot of memories just to ride through the campus.